Hi, I'm Gerd Tundle, acclaimed health journalist, turned motivational speaker, and transformational coach. This show is for anyone who wants to lead a happier, healthier, and inspired life. Create more self-love, inject more joy and abundance into their daily life. Join me for inspiring interviews and spiritual topics so you can become a soul warrior. You're listening to episode 4 of the Get Inspired with Gerds podcast. Now, today I have an amazing guest on the show. This person just proves that it's so important to be connected with oneself and understand your intuition and always trust it no matter what, because it will always lead you back to who you are. Now, Aldo Raffa is a modern mystic, spiritual coach and Egyptian Reiki master. He has a background in tarot numerology, past lives, angels and spirit guides. He personally witnessed many transformations and aims to bring synchronicity and magic into the lives of those he works with. Aldo, it's an absolute pleasure having you on my show and thank you for joining me.
Oh, good. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me.
Bless you. My dear, it was amazing having that tarot card reading with you. I can't believe it was in June. And I'm so interested about what your story was like. So could you tell the listeners what your life was like before you became a tarot card reader, a modern mystic, and a spiritual coach?
Well, I was always very, very sensitive as a child, and I would sense things, feel things, but it was not in a very healthy way. You know, if someone next to me, had a toothache, I'd have a toothache. It was that sort of ungrounded energy that I very much had challenges with. And I mean, even to this day, it's about, for me, grounding. Some people want to open up and they want to expand their consciousness and their connection. But for me, it was one of my biggest challenges was actually to ground and be present in the physical, to love the body, to be in my own power center. So that was one of my biggest struggles. So I had the psychic sensitivity, but I didn't actually have the tools to anchor it at the time.
When was the realization for you it's time that I need to make that change?
Well, it's a very good question. And I don't think it happened overnight. I don't think I woke up one day and thought, right, I've got a little bit of a problem here. Because when you feel other people's stuff all the time, you kind of just think everyone does the same thing. So it was a kind of process, actually, of realizing that I had this sensitivity, but my challenge was to not just block it off or shut it down, but was to bring it into my physical world and anchor it. I think roughly around the age of about, I want to say about 15, 16, where there was a lot of different emotions going on with the family, with certain friends. And I was actually very confused. I was picking up so many different feelings, emotions, and I ended up getting quite sick because I took on someone else's ailments, and it was all a bit like, okay, right, I need to maybe learn a little bit here, and that's really where I suppose I surrendered because I am an Aries. An Aries can be very headstrong and a bit like, come on, we can do it all. And I think I kind of plowed away with it for a long time, not really working with it. So I actually ended up going to a community. I worked there. It was a beautiful community I'd heard of. A relative of mine, my aunt, had told me about it. She's a beautiful healer. She works with a lot of different holistic practices, reflexology, massage, and lots of different healing systems and modalities. And she really recommended that I go there. So I went there for about a month and a half, actually, and I ended up working on the land there and doing different things. But the community itself was called Damaha, and they were a group of beautiful spiritual souls, and there was a lot of wisdom there, and they had a deep connection, actually, to Egypt. And it was there that I began meeting some amazing teachers that began guiding me a little bit more and explaining a little bit more of what was going on for me. Because, my family wasn't exactly, really, I mean, my aunt was very connected. My dad was very fascinated by the psychic world, but you wouldn't sort of say I was in like a family that really, kind of supported it. So that was the beginning of really recognizing that I did have a tremendous amount of sensitivity, and that if I didn't learn to ground it and feel safe in it, then it would be very unhealthy, and I could have potentially lost a lot of important qualities, which at the time I was losing. So that was the beginning of the journey. But actually, I think it probably has been a work in progress, if you like, through the beginning of that journey, and even up until now. Grounding is something that I have to go, right, I'm doing this, I'm here in the physical, thank you very much. And this is my body, this is my temple. And I think a lot of psychics or people with a lot of psychic sensitivity have that battle, have that challenge.
Yeah, it's interesting that you were saying that, because I remember as a child growing up, I, like yourself, I would pick up everybody else's energy, and then they would flip it back on me and say, "You've changed. What's happened to you?"
Yes, it's like mirroring, isn't it? It's that mirroring effect, and you don't even know you're doing it.
Yeah, and it's amazing that if we obviously knew that when we were younger, we would have picked it up straight away. But I guess that was our journey, that we had to understand it and almost kind of create. Obviously, at that time, we probably created like a barrier to protect ourselves. But then, as we were talking about earlier on, just before we were doing the interview, about how even when you protect yourself, you can actually create more of the things that you don't want.
Absolutely. And it's interesting, and we're going to talk, I know, a little bit later about this, but yeah, I'm not a massive fan of protection, because, a lot of people would sort of say this to me, particularly on my early sort of stage of the journey. Teachers would say, "Oh, we need protection." And protection for me didn't feel very good, because what it felt like I was doing was almost just shutting off. And that's, again, what a lot of sensitive souls can do. They can either be so open that they take on everything, or actually very shut off. And that's not good either. You mean? You're just shut off, you're hiding away, you're protecting. And that's not necessarily, again, a very integrated or evolved way of working. But it can do the job. And I think protection did do the job for a while. But again, it made me think, well, I'm not really working energetically here in the right place, and I'm not feeling safe in that. So I kind of flip that around and use the word now, and use the intention now of safety, feeling safe in that.
I like that. So, you started hanging around with people who kind of understood more about your intuition, and how you could work with your emotions and kind of, like you said, create safety. So what did you do next?
Very good question. I began learning Reiki, the Usui. I don't know if you've heard of the Usui Reiki system, but I began learning that, which I was so fascinated by. And I love the journey of Reiki. And I think that really also supported me in some levels. I did feel like something was missing, actually. And later on, I kind of went into Egyptian Reiki, but it kind of found me, actually, and I've always had a very strong connection to Egypt, and it kind of goes back to, bizarrely enough, even the community back when I was 16, 17, that I ended up working in and living in for a while. So that was really when I started feeling a lot more. I think the tools of Usui Reiki really allowed me to kind of ground, to anchor the energies a bit more, which was great. And I ended up doing a course online as well, which I found very useful, and started going to different talks, and and it kind of really allowed me to work on the grounding aspect, and kind of just really seeing how important the physical world was. I still wasn't completely convinced, and I think this is very this is very much me in a nutshell. I have to sort of live by experience. If someone says to me, that's going to be an ungrounding experience, I'm going to go and do it until I find out it's not. And that's unfortunately the way I've worked for a lot of my life. So in a way, I've kind of learned through mistakes. Sometimes very foolish ones. Ironically enough, my name means old wise one. It's got to be a fool sometimes before you can gain that wisdom, and then of course sort of depart that knowledge. So yeah, a lot of it has been through really trial and error, really, and just realizing that, and that's what I think the Usui Reiki made me realize, that I was a very sensitive soul, and that I couldn't be open all the time, because that wasn't good. I couldn't kind of just be open. I would have big issues with boundaries with that, and I think a lot of people, when you're very sensitive and intuitive, you can really not know boundaries, not know your stuff from their stuff. And I kind of felt that learning Reiki made me very aware that I had to find a balance between being open enough to love, to have compassion, to have connection and understanding, but strong enough in my own space and courageous enough in my own space to hold that, and to have the boundaries within all of that. So yeah, it was the beginning of awareness, and I learned that. Going back now, when was that? That was about 6 years ago. So really, only in the last 6 years have I probably been a lot more working with and connected to that balance, between those two rhythms. But like I say, it is a work in progress, because, as I said, the way I've kind of been born and the way I see it is that I've been very open, and I as I said, I find my life constantly. People say, "Oh, do you meditate?" And I said, "Well, not really. I do and I don't. I feel like I'm constantly in that space. If anything, I'm grounding and trying to get here on the earth."
I love the bit about what you're saying. It's about being balanced, because I feel that whether you're working in the non-holistic world or the holistic world, balance is key in no matter what you do in all areas of your life.
Absolutely. And this is something that I think actually my guides are always telling me this, actually, not just about myself, but about a lot of humanity. We have a lot of imbalance. And I think, it's not about, happiness or sadness. Those are just emotions, you know what I mean? And once you transcend emotions, you enjoy happiness as much as you enjoy sadness. You enjoy pain as much as you enjoy pleasure. But when you get to the key of it all, as you said, it is balance, and balance is the key to anything, really, in regards to whatever work you're doing, or you want to do, whether that be personal development, or other areas of your life.
Yeah, and I feel it's interesting in especially kind of like the entrepreneur kind of world, where I see so many people like hardly sleeping, and they're like, no, we need to succeed and we need to do everything. But then it's like we were saying, it's all to do with balance. If you don't balance, eventually the sleep will catch up with you, or your body will tell you something's not right with you, or you might get like a headache or an ache or a pain because you're not listening to what your body wants. And I guess it's all linked back to being intuitive.
Absolutely. Listening to your body. Yeah. I mean, how often do we not, as a society, not listen to our body, listen to ourselves? We plow on, we push forward. And I think at the end of the day, our body has needs, our mind has needs and wants, our soul has needs and wants. And really my job is to look at those different aspects, to look at the three aspects, the mind, the body, and the soul, and inspire and empower the client to actually listen and balance those three rhythms up. But of course, it is their own responsibility, and I think this is where some of my work can be quite interesting, because when you open somebody's eyes to the fact that they can heal themselves, it takes a tremendous amount of responsibility and duty to do that. And some people don't want to do that.
I guess it's that they almost want to carry on being in that victim kind of mindset and not want to set themselves free.
I think victim, victor, it's a big kind of archetype that gets portrayed and through society. And, I don't think it's as black and white as that. I think we have all these qualities and all these wonderful things within ourselves. And I really do believe whatever, you're going through, it is for your highest growth. But it's learning to kind of rise above and take responsibility. And it's a responsibility for your own inner rhythms.
I like that. That's very true, actually. Yeah. So Madhu, you're now a modern mystic, spiritual coach, and Egyptian Reiki master. So you were saying that you're helping people to kind of become balanced. How else are you doing that through these different techniques?
Well, I use a combination of many different techniques. So I'm an Egyptian Reiki master. So I teach the ancient art of Egyptian Reiki, which works with the elements. So it works with the fire, the earth, the air, and the water, and it attunes people to these elements and these energies, which allows people to work with a balanced healing system. So that I thoroughly enjoy because on the attunements, I teach levels 1 and 2 together. It's quite full on. Some people are like, "Oh my gosh, you do them together?" And I'm like, "Yeah," because I'm very much a fast-paced person, and I like transformation in the quickest way. So I do kind of cram a lot in with my teachings, because I think in this day and age everything's speeding up. So I like to kind of work with clients in quite a fast-paced way. I'm also a past life regressionist, so I take people back to their past life, as well as a life between life regressionist and a future progressionist. So in those sessions, I take you back to look at your karmic cycles, because sometimes in this life you can have stuff, and when you have a past life regression, it might feel like what comes up is nonsense. It makes no sense to this current life. But a lot of things, we come in with. We come in with stuff that we don't even know we come in with. So what I love about the regressions is it really allows a person, again, it empowers a person to take more responsibility, and look deeper within themselves, and to then hopefully trust and balance out that inner rhythm.
Wow. And what's been like the most interesting story you've had when you've done the past life regression with somebody?
It's a very good question. They're all very, very, very interesting. They're all very fascinating. But the ones I love the most, because some of them are very hard to prove, and a lot of times clients will come and they're like, "Oh, I thought I was going to be like a prince. I think I'm going to be a princess, or I think I'm going to be Cleopatra." And you know what? They're never who they think they are. And usually they're very shocked and surprised that they're usually just quite an average Joe. But if you think about it logically, statistics, population will tell you, in terms of how many kings and queens there were versus how many other people there were, chances are you're not going to be that person. So I like that. I do like that when the client kind of really gets quite blown away with what comes up, and it's so not what they expected and so not what they thought. I had a very interesting session actually this weekend. I thought this is quite fascinating. I'll tell you for why. Because sometimes it's very hard to prove. I don't believe I'm here. I don't believe my job is to prove any of this to people. Yeah. At one point in time, I used to believe that, but I think it was about believing, or I think it was about maybe that was a mission for myself that I had to trust in.
Yeah.
Right? But this weekend, I did a very interesting past life regression for a woman. And a lot of the things she was saying, was so interesting. Of course, I, took notes of it all. And she actually went back to India, and she was an English woman living in India back in the British sort of colonial times. But what was so fascinating about this session, she told me names. She had the address. And after the session, I actually looked up and we found, the place. And I just thought that was just, and I love that when you've got stuff coming through that you just couldn't possibly, know and make up. And there it is. It's there. So that was very fascinating. And there was a lot of stuff in that life where she felt very guilty and very responsible for things and just generally very, very, very unhappy. And she'd lost a partner in that relationship. And it was funny because she was going through a sort of similar experience. And I do believe that when we do these past lives, we tap into the life that they need to go to, in a life that's right for them, that tends to have correlations, certain themes, if you will, that relate and can really help unlock and access more knowledge and understanding in our present life. I mean, I even question if these lives are still going on. I really sort of do. I question if it is a past life, it might be a life in another, in another universe. If time is an illusion, as science is now, certain science, sort of sciences are now starting to believe or say or put out there. So that I found a very interesting session. A lot of the sessions I find very interesting are the ones that for me, have detail in them, that you can actually look up and research and go, wow, how the hell would you have known that is the place, that is the address, that person did live there, And we had one of those moments this weekend. So on a personal level, I like that, only because it's kind of a bit of, facts. And it can be hard to prove in a lot of lifetimes, because let's be honest, when we go back to certain chapters, people didn't have books. And if you weren't very wealthy, you wouldn't be educated, and you wouldn't have, all of that kind of knowledge and things being reported.
Wow. You just took me back, actually. It was a few weeks ago. I was driving somewhere out towards northwest London, and in the car I heard a voice. And I was going past a cemetery, and it said, so-and-so is now safe. And I was like, okay, I've never experienced this before. This is really weird. And I was like, I must have known them in another lifetime.
Well, that could very much be the case. That could very much be the case. Yeah. Or, your mediumship is opening up. Your mediumistic links are opening up.
Wow.
Yeah. It's funny, because a couple of weeks ago, I was going to Greenwich, and I don't quite know how this happened, but I got off at the wrong stop or something, and there was actually a funeral happening for a very young guy, a young boy. I say young boy, probably in his early 20s, and so not really a young boy, a young man, but he had a very young face, and I walked past there, and I don't know how I ended up there. Spirit guide us sometimes, and I looked at this sort of funeral that was going on. It was, everyone was getting ready all in black, and the message was, you're going to read for a lady that has lost a very dear friend that looks just like me. And I thought, how bizarre, how interesting. Wow. So the message I was getting was through this other spirit of a younger male that was basically navigating me to go there to tell me to make sure I'm listening and looking at all the details, because the next reading you're about to do is very related to that. And that's exactly what happened. I went to the shop after and I said, you've lost this guy. And that's what they'll do as well. Spirit will work with our memories as well. They'll work with our memories and our feelings and our thoughts. And they have a funny way of if they want to get our attention, of doing little things like that, popping little thoughts and feelings. Never here to scare us. And if it is scaring you, then you really need to work on your safety and your intention setting, because that's not good energy, and that isn't probably, that probably isn't good stuff, or really any sort of connection worth connecting with.
Wow. I'm just kind of like blown away that you were guided to go there, and wow. It shows how powerful our energies are, aren't they? And that we should always listen out to the messages that are coming to us.
Absolutely. And that's something I'm very passionate about, because people often ask me, they sort of say, Aldo, what are you? What do you do? And people will tell me what I am. They'll say, oh, you're a medium because you connected to my, loved, my son in spirit, or my loved, my dearly departed, dad, or whatever. Other people will say, well, you're an amazing tarot reader. And I actually don't know what I am. But one thing I do know, because I often feel like people are always telling me what I do or have done for them, and I am. And I think the one thing, and one of my main passions actually, is to show people how connected we all are. That this isn't something that, only a few selective few can do. We are actually all in tune. And once we transcend the matrix, of fear, separation and control, the biggest illusions, that there are, once we transcend that, we come into love. And love is the power. And with that power, knowledge and wisdom can really grow and be accessed. And that's something I think I'm really passionate about doing. And that's probably why I do the work that I do at the end of the day. That's the thing that I love to show people to access and to obtain, because we can all do this. It's just a case of really, being open and trusting in the process of it.
The intuition, wow, it's so powerful once we connect. Like, I remember when we were doing like the tarot card reader, and I was explaining how I see these things, and I wanted to live in this area, and I moved there, and like certain things, and I agree with you. It's so true that once you connect, you can start to see the dots to certain situations and scenarios.
So Sounds like you manifested it quite nicely.
Yeah. Yeah. There's even been times where I've walked into areas and I'm like, I've been here before, but I don't know why. And like also like, as you know, I want to be you know, in LA in the future, and I have never been there, but my soul already knows that I've been there before and I need to go back. It's so powerful once we like we connect to it and listen to it.
Yeah, absolutely. LA's calling a lot of people at the moment. LA's got an amazing, amazing energy. I was out there in March, and was it March? Yeah, March. The energy was incredible, and it's very high vibration out there. So some believe it's the crown chakra of the world. So it's very that's not LA, but California, and it has an amazing high vibration there. So yeah, it is funny because there's a lot of places I've been to, and I've gone, yeah, I've been here before. And when I was in LA, I had a similar experience. There was a lot of like deja vu, like I remember this, I've been here, and it's like, but I haven't, but I have. So yeah, and that's often, that is often past life. I mean, you could say maybe not so much with LA. Some parts of LA, you might have seen it on a movie or something, because I know a lot of it is filmed back there. But even just the average, sort of castle you might go and visit on holiday in a different part of the country, or you might just have this sudden moment where you go, I remember this. That's often past life experiences, that you're accessing. I mean, really, we're getting into a bit of a heavy conversation, because it could even be, like with your case, future life. Maybe you've not been there in a past life. Maybe you've been there in the future. And I don't believe time is linear. I really don't. From doing the past life, future life progressions with people, time, I think, is a variant, which is why we have to fiddle with it all the time. Every 4 years, the leap year, we have to sort of change it around to kind of fit with our linear system. But I like to think of time as a squiggly line. So we come at points, we meet at points with this squiggly line, if you like, where we're connecting to our past, present, and future all at the same time on a soul level.
That's so interesting. I could talk to you about this all day.
That is getting very heavy, isn't it? I know, it's getting a bit like out there.
But the thing is, it's always important to know these kind of things, because like it could explain so many of you guys out there who might be like, oh, what's happening here? I don't understand it. And like that, maybe that is the case. Maybe we are so psychic that we don't even realize how psychic we are.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you look at any sort of child or person that's perhaps not been so programmed, if you like, because that's the thing. It goes back to programming. There's a lot of programming that can come in, and programming is very important. We need programming. We need that because it sets boundaries. It sets, they say, don't they? Evolution it begins at when we have the boundaries. It's like, we can't evolve without those. But when we strip away through the illusions of some of these functions that we need, but we just temporarily sort of transcend them, we connect to a very psychic energy, and an energy that is just filled with love. And the more and more I work with what I do, I believe it's a love vibration, and I think that is the vitamin, that is the nutrient of life, and it's the thing that makes the world really go round, and it actually is the thing that connects us, or if you have too little of it, disconnects us and gets us caught up in the matrix.
I remember a time actually a few years ago, my niece, she's only 9 years old, but when she was really young, I remember her saying to my cousin that she's going to have a boy. And she touched her tummy and said, you're going to have a boy. And when my nephew was born, it was a boy. And then there was another time where she told another auntie and said, she was expecting, and she's like, there's no baby. And she's like, what are you on about? There's a baby. And she had a miscarriage. And then later on, she was pregnant again. She said, you're going to have a girl. And she had a girl. So it's so true. When we're not programmed, we can connect so much that we can almost, like you said, predict the future.
Well, if we go back to that thing that I touched on, time is an illusion, and it's a variant, and it's not linear. Yeah, I mean, are we tapping into the future, or are we just tapping into the here? And maybe in this moment, everything is connected. And that's the interesting thing when you let go of the programming. And of course, when we get older, we get more conditioned. So children are bound to be a lot more open. And it's just amazing from the story you mentioned there. It's just amazing how they just know. And they know like they know, without any question of it. And I think we do get programmed later in life, which is important. It is important, but we can sometimes really disconnect from that creative mind. And really, that is how, you know, the psychic energies work. I mean, a lot of time I'll read for people and they'll say, oh, well, you know, it's quite funny actually, they'll say many different things, but some people will sort of say, oh, well, you know, how do you know this? You're just imagining this, aren't you? Like, how does, and some of it will be a bit freak and whatever, and other times people will be like, well, how do you know this is what's going to happen? And I'm like, well, nothing is written in stone, but this is the vibration at the moment. But with certain details, for example, people will be like, how do you know that? And I say, well, I don't know. And they're like, where did that come from? Are you just imagining? And I'm like, yeah, I am. You know, so the intuition uses the creative mind. It uses that imaginative aspect, because it's not a linear, logical, you know what I mean, programmed kind of mind thing. It doesn't come from the mind. It comes from that thing that pumps oxygen from the mind, which is the heart. And the heart's very, very sweet, very, very vulnerable, very, very creative, and very symbolic. You know, it communicates with us in a very symbolic kind of a creative way, not so logical, not so linear.
Can you tell us more about Egyptian Reiki? Because I've heard of Reiki before, and I'm sure some of the listeners haven't heard of what Egyptian Reiki is. Yes,
absolutely. I've always been connected to Egypt ever since a little boy. I just loved Egypt, and then I think I got really scared of it, funnily enough, and I kind of shut down my whole love of Egypt. Now, a kind of synchronicity of events came about. Funnily enough, it was a past life connection I had with this woman who was teaching this Egyptian Reiki, and I just loved it. So I had to, you know, learn it and depart it, the knowledge when I learned it. So Egyptian Reiki is very interesting. It works with the Egyptian god and goddess energies, but not directly, indirectly. So what I'm saying here is, when I teach this, I'm attuning people to a very ancient art. It's an Egyptian vibration, which uses, it's an old Egyptian healing modality, but it uses Reiki to carry it, if you like. Reiki is the carrier of this energy. It is a very, very, very deep soul healing energy, and it's got a very primordial energy about it as well. So it's very love vibration, but very sort of primordial, and, you know, don't mess with me, love, which is very good if you're finding it hard to have boundaries, actually, or if you're finding it hard to be, you know what I mean, in your personal power. So for one thing, I really love about this system with Egyptian Reiki, it's very personal power orientated, and it works predominantly, you know, with the Egyptian goddesses. It's an attunement to the the 4 elements, but also a 5th element called the violet flame. I teach levels 1 and 2, currently teaching this at Greenwich, and I teach a master's level as well. It's a very interesting journey. You go on a 21-day cleanse and clearing, which can bring up a lot of soul stuff, similar to regular Reiki, but very different at the same time. As I've done both systems, I was very cocky, actually, I'm going to be honest. When I learned this, I was like, well, I've already done, you know, a Sui Reiki. How can this be any different, you know? And oh my gosh, I was in for a shock, because the cleanse was completely different and actually more full on, but more on a soul level. Reiki Sekem's more feminine. It's a lot more lighter, and often when you receive the healing, it's a bit cooler and it works a lot quicker. So people who are drawn to it tend to be called to it, and I just love the fact that it's a very ancient system that's kind of making a comeback. The word Sekem kind of sort of is a derivative of a few different words, but the main sort of word itself and what it means, it's been translated. It's an Egyptian word that's kind of been translated and put together, which means spiritual power. And I have to say, what I love about the energy of Sekem, it's very magical. It has a very magical energy. And even though it's a healing modality and system, what we touch on in the actual levels 1 and 2 and go further into with masters is actually also working with it in a variety of different ways for manifesting and, you know, bringing more wonderful stuff in your life and clearing other blocks on deep soul levels. So it's a really nice, well-rounded system. It was actually channeled, I believe, by a lovely guy called Patrick, an American man, back in the 1980s when he was meditating. in the pyramids of Giza. But it's not a modern system, it's a modern course, or should you say interpretation, but the energy is not modern at all. It's very ancient, and I highly, highly recommend it.
Amazing. So if anybody's listening and wants to kind of check out your work, where can they find you?
Well, you can find me on my website, www.aldoraffa.co.uk. I'm usually around in a beautiful shop called Dragonflies in Greenwich, just by Cuddy Sark, where I tend to do a lot of different, workshops, tarot workshops, and run a lot of different courses. But yeah, the best way is my website for more information on all things mystical and magical.
Oh, bless you. My dear, we are coming towards the end of the show. It's gone so quickly. I wanted to ask you a quick question. What are you most grateful for in your life?
Very good question. I think I'm most grateful for, and I do honestly believe this, I'm most grateful for my family, because they don't understand me, bless them, but they love me, and there's so much love there. I think I'm very blessed to have a very loving family, and a very kind of open energy to kind of how I work, but also just very blessed, I think, for people generally in my life. I seem to be very fortunate with the people I connect with and have in my world. So my friends and family.
Oh, I love that. My dear, and what are your 5 top tips for someone who kind of wants to connect with their intuition and they're not really sure how to?
Yes. Well, I kind of believe it all boils down to, we could break down to 5. Intention is so important, when it comes to working with energy. Intention is key, so set your intention. Intend to connect with the highest divine love, divine light, divine support system, whatever you want to call it God, call it universe, whatever. So intention is the first step. Secondly, getting centered, getting safe in that intention. So a safety exercise, something that allows you to feel safe. So maybe imagining or intending a perfect place, a happy place, a real safe place for you to just trust in that intention you've set. Thirdly, mindfulness. So any form of meditation that allows you to still your mind. When I say still your mind, let your thoughts come and go, and just kind of breathe, focusing on the breathing. So being clean and clear and almost a bit empty, Thinking is very dangerous when it comes to working psychically and with your intuition. So any technique that can get you out of your mind will move you into your senses. Finally, second to last, imagination. Being creative, listening to your creative mind, doing creative things, whether that be painting, writing, drawing, whatever that may be. Something creative is always very good to get you out of your mind again and getting yourself more aware of your imaginative mind or creative mind. And finally, grounding. There's nothing worse when you're sort of open and you're up there in that world, but you're not kind of coming back down to earth. So with anything or enough of something, or even with yourself. So grounding or anchoring is very, very key as well. A great way of grounding, a very quick grounding technique, is getting your keys, your house keys, put them in your hands, walk around with them, and just feel the vibration of your home, your temple. Visualize gold roots going into the center of the earth. Breathe that up, send out whatever wants to come out, and visualize that gold, around the room. So the ceilings, the walls of the room, and just see that lovely gold energy around you. So, to answer your question quickly, intention, safety, mindfulness, imagination, and grounding are 5 key tips.
I love those. Those are amazing 5 top tips. Thank you so much. And just thank you for sharing your story.
Oh, it was amazing. Thank you. Well, I think what was key and what I really wanted to talk about was actually some of the challenges I had. And maybe this relates to people listening. If you are having challenges with grounding, energy clearing, feeling safe in that, or perhaps the opposite, you want to open up more, either way. But I think it was important to share those stories when it comes to working with energy.
Bless you, Maddie.
Thank you very much, girls. It's been lovely. Thank you. Take care.
What an amazing interview with Aldo. Guys, do check out his website. I definitely believe you will learn something new from him. He's taught me so much about just being present and trusting one's own intuition. Fortunately, it's the end of the show. Just before I head off, don't forget you can find me on Twitter at @IamGerds. You can find me on Facebook at Get Inspired with Gerds. And you can also check out my website, which is www.getinspiredwithgerds.com. Now, before I head off, I want to leave you with this quote. Your intuition knows what to do. The trick is getting your head to shut up so you can hear it. I think it's so true. And that was a quote by Louise Smith. Take care, guys, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.